This episode was brought to you by Allianz Travel Insurance. You're all packed for the family trip, but your kid catches a bug at school. Our trip cancellation benefits can help. Learn more at AllianzTravelInsurance.com.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
You've just recreated the worst possible nightmare.
Fiscal year 1999, 2.3 trillion missing. Fiscal year 2000, 1.1 trillion missing.
You'd think with 2 mortgages out, the repo guy's staking out my car, my job on the line.
Even when we win, it's just a matter of time before we give it all back.
There are serious financial management problems.
Are we potentially at a point where we might actually lose the financial system as we know it?
And you're standing there and you suddenly realize, hey, I'm still here.
Don't be a victim of the current economic crisis. Turn the tables on the banksters, collection agencies, and other crooks. You can stress out trying to find a way to make the minimum payments every month, or you can get them to pay you. Join hosts Jesse and Dave every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time for What Lies in Your Debt, right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Where information never sleeps.
Are you pondering what I'm pondering? Stop it, Pinky, or I shall have to hurt you.
Excuse me, what do you want to do tonight?
Excuse me, I'd like to ask you a few questions.
I look good. I mean, really good.
Hey, everyone! Come and see how good I look! Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen. Cannonball!
I want your DOR.
No, sir.
I want your DOR.
I ain't gonna quit.
Spell it. D-O-R.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Revolution Radio, and it is time for the Opperman Report with Mr. Ed Opperman right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and the seed of freedom rides with you.
Don't ever let him see you coming.
And so, with no further ado, I present to you Ed Opperman.
Welcome to the Opperman Report. I am your host, Ed Opperman. I am a private investigator, president of Opperman Investigations. I'm also a digital forensic investigator, president of Accurate Information Recovery. I have a blog called The Opperman Report. I also wrote a book called How to Succeed as a Private Investigator, and that's available on my website, emailrevealer.com. And now I have a radio show called The Opperman Report on freedomslips.com. I want to thank my producer today, Ann, for really working very hard this week and helping me get the show together, because we've got a really big show for you today on a really controversial topic. And it's inspired a lot of interest on Facebook and on social media and that kind of stuff. But before we get started with my guests, please don't forget that the station is listener-sponsored. So if you like my show, please go to the website, freedomslips.com, and go into the chat room there. And there's a donate button where you can donate to the station. And if you donate a lot, I'll be on a lot. If you don't donate, they'll probably kick me off. Okay, great. So now my first guest on the show today is Shawn Wheeler. And we'll be discussing the case of the West Memphis Three. Now, this is a case back in 1993. There were 3 young boys Stephen Branch. Oh my goodness, what was that? Stephen Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers. And they were second graders playing around the street there after school, and they were chased down, they were beaten, they were stripped naked, they were sexually molested, and they were mutilated. Their bodies were mutilated. The police investigated. They caught 3 young men, Jason Baldwin, Jesse Miskelly, and Damian Eccles. And these men were put on trial, and they were convicted of their offense. Then what happened was there were some HBO documentaries called Paradise Lost, 1, 2, and 3. The first one was Paradise Lost, The Murders at Robin Hood Hills. And this caused a lot of attention across the country, and again in the media and on social networks. Back then it was like Usenet and Alt, West Memphis 3. You could go on there and chat about the case and stuff like that. And it created a little cottage industry of support networks and support groups that raised money to create awareness about the case. And they were able to get the case reopened after a series of appeals. And they actually cut a deal. The new DA down there in Arkansas cut a deal with these young men, and they were able to plead guilty and be released from jail on a suspended sentence in a way. So now my first guest is Shawn Wheeler. Now, I first ran across Shawn when I was investigating this case back in the 90s. Originally, I was a supporter. I thought that the young men were being framed. I saw the documentary Paradise Lost, and I thought that perhaps there was an injustice going on. But after reading up on Usenet and reading up on the facts of the case and the court documents and such, my opinion changed. And most of that is due to the writings of Shawn Wheeler. Later on in our show, we're going to have Terry Hobbs, who is the stepfather of Stephen Branch, and he'll be on to give his side of the story. He's been smeared and accused with less evidence than any other accusations, any other scapegoats that they've had in this case, in this ongoing controversy. And he'll be on to give his side of the story and present his complaints about some of the slander and attacks that have been on his character. So, Shawn, are you there?
Yeah, I sure am.
Okay, great. Shawn, can you introduce yourself and tell us how you got involved in the case? I hear you. Great.
Yes, Ed. My name's Shawn Wheeler. I lived in Arkansas at the time of the murders. Worked with one of Steve Branch's relatives in Blytheville, and that was how I first got interested in the case. Hadn't heard anything much until the appeal started, and at the time the internet was still a pretty new thing to most of the public, and I started reading polls from a group in California claiming that these guys were in prison and everything was wrong, and that we'd soon find out the truth. And kind of all started from there. That was in, I want to say, about 95, 96, we started seeing the first polls from them, and it all kind of came together there. And of course, as you mentioned, we first ran into each other on Usenet, and then migrated to discussion boards after that. But I had an open mind about it. I wasn't at the trials. I wasn't part of the investigation. I was an independent and objective person. So I felt that if anybody should have any credibility, it should be somebody that isn't biased about the case and doesn't have any connections to it directly. So I studied capital crime since the 1970s, but this is the first case where I've really gotten this far in depth.
Well, let me ask you this, Shawn, because a lot of the people listening don't know the details of this case and these trials and these murders like you and I do, like a lot of the people who follow this trial on a daily basis. Can you just give us a description of the crime and the arrests and everything as you experienced it down there in Arkansas?
Sure. Initially, the children turned up missing in the early evening, and a search ensued. A lot of criticisms followed on how the search was conducted. Police reports were taken, and the following day, searchers turned out in considerable numbers in the area to look around. The bodies were discovered in a ditch behind the Blue Beacon truck wash, and from there, an investigation began in earnest to find out who committed the crime. Less than 30 days later, the suspects were identified after a confession of Jesse Miskelly, who came to investigators' attention not directly but indirectly because it was thought that he might know some information about the people responsible. Despite what the public has said, there was a very earnest investigation and diligent discovery of the facts. Jesse Miskelly confessed to the crime, and physical evidence of the scene of the crime tended to corroborate his account. The trial which took place, there were two trials in two separate locations. So Jesse was tried in Corning, Arkansas, and Jason and Damien were tried in Jonesboro. The juries convicted the defendants in two separate trials. Yet everybody in Arkansas supposedly had some huge conspiracies against these guys. There were allegations of Satanism because of the gruesome nature of the crime and the age of the victims, but the fact of the matter is this stuff about satanic panic. I lived in Arkansas for years, but at that point, I never saw any satanic panic. I saw people who were concerned that 3 8-year-olds were murdered. That I did see, but this idea that there was some kind of witch hunt on is preposterous. Nobody who lives there believes this. Nobody has moved away from Arkansas saying I wore black and they threatened to arrest me, so it was kind of absurd. In the
That's interesting because we have a question. Yeah, Shawn, we have a question in chat, and they're asking you, Shawn, do you believe it was a satanic murder?
Okay, you're breaking up a bit.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the question in chat is, Shawn, do you believe it was a satanic murder?
Please describe a satanic murder. That's about as vague a question as to describe.
Do you believe that it was a satanic? Do you believe it was satanic? Do you believe it was satanic?
Oh, do I believe they're satanic? I don't know what a satanic murder is. That's a pretty subjective judgment. Do I think there were evil aspects to it? Certainly I do. But do I believe that Satanism was the cause of the crime? No, I don't. I think that Satanism as a practice is a recognized religion by the United States Armed Forces. So, this idea that one has necessarily something to do with the other, I think is preposterous. That does not. The problem is where you depart from this and say, well, is Satanism a cause of crime? I don't think that's necessarily, no more than Christianity or anything else is. I think it's a reasonable theory that the state had, and it was a reasonable question of investigators. That I do believe, yes.
And there was some history of at least vampire activity with these kids and with the Damien Echols and his girlfriend. Damien Echols did admit to drinking blood, right?
Yes, he did, and not just his girlfriend. This is something he admitted when he was in treatment therapy at Charter. So it's not like a jilted girlfriend said mean-spirited things about them. These are healthcare professionals that are objectively trying to treat the patient that are recording things that he said. So he had some pretty non-traditional beliefs. I think it's fair to say that. But the idea that law enforcement first discovered that there was a problem is kind of absurd. Even his own parents were kind of concerned about him and literally put him on a bus from Oregon back to Arkansas because of his threats of violence. If his own family is afraid of him, why is it irrational that police would believe he's a viable suspect?
Now, didn't he also have in his home like the heads of cat skulls and dog skulls and even a rat skull that he used to? I think he would pour battery acid on the corpses and then to dissolve the skin and the hair and stuff.
That's true. The details emerge from this bit by bit. The first witness to really provide a substantive statement was Joe Bartouche. Joe Bartouche was related to Jason Baldwin, at the time, the defense was trying to assemble a list of witnesses to provide an alibi for Jason Baldwin. One of the names they supplied on their witness list was Hubert Bartouche. West Memphis Police Department went to interview Hubert, who is Jason Baldwin's great uncle, and while he was there, Joe Bartouche, who is Hubert's son, I guess, a cousin to Jason, spontaneously made the statement that he saw Damien Eccles with this Great Dane, and that statement's not. I mean, it's not really up to dispute. This is not a witness that the prosecution procured. It's not a witness that the police department created from nowhere. This is somebody spontaneously volunteered an account of Jason, literally kicking and destroying his dog. So, I mean, how are you supposed to ignore that? One of the things investigators talk about, especially juvenile investigators, McDonald triad, animal torture, enuresis past age of 12, and fire starting. Well, if animal torture is not relevant, why? I think that's a reasonable thing for them to go, there really is something about this kid we need to be concerned about. It's always puzzled me about supporters. They seem so casual about the death of a human, but, if you killed an animal, they're all over you. How does that work?
I got you. Now wasn't there also an incident of him starting a fire in a back of a school classroom?
Okay, you broke up just a bit there.
Yeah, you were talking before about how Eccles had started a fire in a classroom.
When Damien was in high school?
Yeah.
Oh, Michael Carson. Yeah, we should talk about Michael Carson. Michael Carson.
No, not Michael
one
Carson.
Of the people.
Not Michael Carson. Arson. That Eccles started a fire at school. A fire.
Yeah, he allegedly started a fire in the back of one of the classrooms at Marion High School. So that's at least two of the three sides right there.
Wasn't there something too where he spoke? Wasn't there something too where Eccles had spoken to the juvenile officer about wanting to sacrifice his first born child?
Yeah, that's from Deanna Holcomb. That was his girlfriend, and he made the statement that if their firstborn child, I think was a male, that he would sacrifice it. The defense really hadn't ever refuted the statement. They certainly never examined it. As far as I can see, she really was past the point where the relationship was a point of agitation for her. So I think she made a credible account. I think he really did say that to her. There's nothing to say that he didn't. Is that a normal thing? If our firstborn child is a male and want to sacrifice him?
No, it's not normal to me. No, not at all. But didn't his current
I've never heard
anybody
say anything like that.
Dominique? I've never heard it either. But didn't his girlfriend Dominique Tier? Now, wasn't her sister or cousin part of a vampire group out in California? And that right before these murders, she returned from California with a book, how to sacrifice children, what music to sacrifice children to?
Well, if you're referring to what Dominique Tier had brought back, she had some relatives in California, and they self-published this thing. It's like the Society of the Undead or something like that, and it almost escaped notice until she and her mother were evicted from their house trailer. Mark Pereskia, who writes for Commercial Appeal, was looking at debris that was discarded in front of the trailer when he found these mimeographed and hand lettered publications, and it was certainly some pretty unconventional stuff by Arkansas standards. Maybe California it was de rigueur, but yeah, they had this thing that her cousin published from California. It's in the archives at West Memphis Police Department. I can't remember if it's been put online, but certainly some unusual ideas or things that, if you went through the rest of Lakeshore, I doubt you would find anything like it at the time. So it was certainly something where you look and you go, okay, that's another thing. This is an important part of the supporter rhetoric is you can pick it apart one piece at a time, but if you look at it as a whole, it certainly makes for a much more compelling picture of, hey, this is a guy we should take a closer look at.
Exactly. I agree with you 100%. And then on top of that, you had the confessions of Jesse Misskelley when he was first questioned by the police. Now, I have a question here from the chat room, right? And they're saying, Shawn, what do you believe is the biggest misconception supporters repeat about the case? And it gives examples. The 12-hour interrogation, the 3 have been exonerated, and the stuff about how they wore all black and listened to Metallica as being a factor in their arrest.
Okay, I didn't get all that, but I did get about the question of Jesse's interrogation. Let's back up just a bit on his confession. Jesse was not picked up as a suspect. He was not handcuffed. He was not placed in the back of a patrol car. All right? You can look at that any way you want. If police thought that you were a person who committed a murder of 3 8-year-olds, you're probably not going to be riding up front. Odds are pretty good you're going to be handcuffed. So right from the outset, this is not a guy who is considered really to be the person who committed the crimes. He's just thought to be somebody who had some useful information. Mike Allen picked him up from Hex, which is still out on the interstate there by 55, and transported him to West Memphis Police Department. He was not immediately questioned because the investigators who want to talk to him, Brian Ridge and Gary Gitchell, were busy working with somebody else. So he sat and waited. When he was finally questioned, the investigator said, I don't think he's being truthful. I'd like him to take a polygraph. At that point, the questioning stopped. He probably questioned for less than 30 minutes. Mike Allen took Jesse back in the front of his unmarked car and went to take him and get permission from his father to take the polygraph. This is a fact. It's not an allegation. His father was not at Hex. Mike Allen turned around and come back and spotted Jesse Misskelley Sr. driving on Missouri Street in a wrecker. He flagged him down, got the permission, and brought him back. To hear supporters tell it, they hunted all over Arkansas, Tennessee, and Mississippi to find his father. And the truth is, he was on his way back to the police department, spotted him, and says, hey, can you sign this? He signed the consent form. Jesse came back, was questioned by a polygrapher, Bill Durham, and the polygraph takes a few minutes to set up. So it wasn't just an instant walk in, set him down, and hook up the wires and wait. So that's kind of an important fact. He was asked questions that were written down, the responses were recorded on the chart, and Bill Durham concluded that his answers were not truthful. At that point, he was questioned by Mike Allen and Brian Ridge, which is a point at which he confessed. So this whole 12-hour thing, and that's something I really want to touch on, this whole 12-hour thing has been bogus from the outset, yet it's the most frequently reported lie by supporters. It's almost unshakable. Do I think his confession was honest? Yes, I do. If it wasn't, why did he keep doing it?
Mm-hmm. Now, how many confessions were there?
It depends on how contentious you want to be. He confessed less than 3 hours after he was picked up as a potential witness. He reconfessed hours later because John Fogelman and the judge who heard the case for the warrants had some questions, so they asked him additional questions. So you could call it a second one, but we'll just call that one. All right, so Jesse confessed once then. After he was convicted and he was transported to the Pine Bluff Diagnostic Unit, he confessed to the deputies a second time on his way down. A few days later, John Fogelman, Brent Davis, and Dan Stidham went to Pine Bluff Diagnostic Unit. This is where the so-called Bible confession came out. For years, people disputed that it even existed, said that I had fabricated that it existed, and that I had never spoken to Brent Davis or John Fogelman. Well, the confession's out there now, and he did confess, and he did swear on the Bible he's telling the truth, and he did tell his lawyer that he committed these murders, or at least was there when they were committed, whether he accepts his guilt or not. He then confessed in Corning another time, and this is only after extensive court hearings, and this time with both his lawyers. So how many is that? Okay. Then he's had many ad hoc confessions after that. Finally, one to a person who goes by the name of True Romance. He admitted his guilt in the crime to her. If he's not telling the truth all those times, where is it where he's disputed it? Where is Jesse Misskelley come out and on the record said, I want the world to know I never committed these crimes. Never seen it. Never happened. He's not going to.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, we're going to be taking a break in about another 3 minutes, okay? So now, is there anything else that's really pressing on that you want to get forward? Some of the people in chat are saying, Shawn, can you present your case of why you think these 3 men are guilty?
I couldn't hear that.
Well, you know what? Let's get that question, because someone else is asking now. Why do you? What is your reasoning for how many times, for how many things changed during those confessions? Now, why did his confession change from one instance of confessing to another instance?
What was the question?
Yeah, they're saying that his confession changed the different times he confessed. So, can you explain why he would change his confession? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send you this question in the... I'm going to send it to you in the chat here so you can read it. And the question is, Shawn, is how do you explain the inconsistencies? Yeah, I know. You'll get it in a second.
Okay, I see the question.
Yeah.
And hello, Bobby. I haven't seen you on in some time. Okay, let's start talking about Jesse, because you can't have it both ways. If a confession is inconsistent with the facts of the crime at all, certainly I think it's reasonable to think the guy's making a false confession. But since the defense has relied on Gisli Gudjonsson, if you look at the things Dan Stidham said, let's go ahead and stick with that for just the time being. Jesse told investigators in his confession in Corning, Arkansas, at the deputy prosecutor's office, he said that he tried to throw authorities off track, and that was the reason he changed details of the crime. So here he's admitted that it was his intent to mislead investigators. But according to Gisli Gudjonsson, in his study, people tend to minimize their involvement in the crime. It's a natural thing for people to do when they're confessing. Don't make me out to be the bad guy. Make somebody else out to be the bad guy. I interviewed Gary Gitchell, and I asked him about the questioning that he did with Jesse Misskelley. One of the questions I asked him was, how did you evoke this confession? What he said was, he drew a circle, and he looked at Jesse, and he said, the people inside the circle are the ones who committed the crime, and the ones that are outside didn't. And he says, help me help me know who is inside, or help me know who is outside. That's all I want to know. And at that point, Jesse tried to mitigate his own responsibility for the crimes.
Okay, we'll be back in a couple of minutes, Shawn.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Most guys freeze. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
The body's filling with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. The heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling it to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting to danger, unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio.
owns you. If you're not in control, then someone else is. Join me, Ivy West, for Voices on the Wind, Saturday from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern in Studio A. I discuss government, health, metaphysics, suppressed science, universal mysteries, little-known incredible facts, alternative energies, and even more than you can imagine. Won't you join us on Revolution Radio Saturdays from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern for Voices on the Wind with me, Ivy West.
There are lives in the balance, people under fire, children at the cannons.
Because if your head's in the sand, your tail is a target.
The Empire is in peril.
You're probably too young to know, but the Empire is always in some kind of peril. I may have been overly rude earlier when I called you a pirate. And I may have been overly charitable when I said I wasn't.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Be here Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time to catch Roxy Lopez straight from the Valley of the Sun. Her discussions run from chemtrails to sovereignty, aliens to conspiracy facts. So join us for The Truth Denied with Roxy Lopez. Again, that's Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
You ever get tired of being wrong? You can't kill the future!
You know what the difference is between you and me? I make this look good.
Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Okay, this is Ed Opperman, and you're listening to the Opperman Report with my guest, Shawn Wheeler, who is an expert on the West Memphis 3 case. And since we're having so many audio problems, I'm going to give Shawn, like the next 15 minutes, Shawn, just lay out your case, Shawn, of why you think these 3 men are guilty. And then also, at the end of that, explain to us why, Shawn, the DA took this plea deal when he had him in prison.
Are we set?
Yep, go.
Okay. Let's start about the mechanics of it. This is one of the first cases in Arkansas where the internet ever came to bear directly on the status of the offenders. All 3 were convicted and sentenced and in prison when the supporter movement began. The movement was fueled to a large degree by the production of the 3 purported documentaries, Paradise Lost, but even further gained traction by the fact that there were websites popping up here and there to propagandize the issue. Guilt or innocence really never seemed to be a keen interest of theirs. They interested the group in California, Kathy Groban Burke, who most supporters know without me providing more information, started to contact celebrities and media and did a superb job of propagandizing the case at the expense of the facts. They interested people as far away as New Zealand, including the gentleman who made the Hobbit movies. And this money and supporter money donated was used to help fuel the defense. In terms of guilt, the things that compelled me was the nature of the confessions, the fact that confessions largely did hold up well to the facts of the case, but more importantly, that the confessions never stopped. Jesse admitted his guilt and later confirmed his guilt to his own lawyer in circumstances that were very unlike him being at West Memphis Police Department. The only person there was his lawyer, and yet he's still saying he's guilty. If he wasn't, why would he tell his lawyer that? That doesn't make any sense. The appeal started And it attracted the interest of people like Brent Turvey and other experts or purported experts who are trying to build their own careers. Over time, the propaganda, I think, started to influence the court system. And the interesting thing is, every due process claim that was filed, the convictions were upheld. But when it came to the DNA statute or the scientific testing statute, which Arkansas passed about 13, 14 years ago, the court took another look at it and said, well, wait a minute, maybe we should allow this testing to take place. One of the concerns a lot of activists had, including me, was that the DNA statute lent itself well towards frivolous claims that lacked merit, such as this one. There was no state evidence that suggested that the victims were molested in this case. So the potential for DNA to be recovered is quite small. In fact, if you look at homicides in general, you'll find that DNA evidence is very, very fractional. Probably less than 5% of the entire cases are linked by DNA, which means that we must still rely on other evidence. Fingerprints, hairs, fibers, other things that tend to link the offender to the crime. When the Arkansas State Supreme Court heard this case and sent it back again for the final time, they opened the door to rehear all the evidence from the defense and all the evidence for the state. The cost to the state would have been staggering. The defense was funded by a movie producer from New Zealand and celebrities from Hollywood. I've never seen a full disclosure of how much money was involved. I would guess the figure is in the millions. The state was faced with having to underwrite the cost of not only the hearings, but assuming that the defense had prevailed, a brand new trial. So Scott Ellington was left with a difficult choice. Does he go back and go through all these hearings, even with state assistants? David Raup, who's one of the assistant attorney generals, would have probably handled a lot of the legal work, but Scott Ellington would have also had to fund paralegals, assistant counsel, and things like that. So he had to balance the cost of his job against the outcome of this case. People make out like, the state just capitulated. It's not true. The state has to balance the cause of justice against the needs of the community. These guys had spent 20 years in prison. Would it make sense to spend money to keep them there and then turn somebody else loose because we can't prosecute the case? I don't know if that's Scott's logic. I can't prove it. But what I can tell you is Scott Ellington made one statement to the media when they were released in August. And what he said was he and his deputies had fully examined the facts of the case. And they had decided that in the interest of justice, even though they could prove that they were guilty all over again, it was better to take a plea deal. Less than 30 days later, Scott Ellington appeared again at the University of Arkansas Little Rock Law School at a symposium to which he was invited. What he said there was not at all what he said when they were released. They wanted to discuss at the symposium the facts of the case and how this conclusion was reached. And Ellington admitted that he was not familiar with the facts of the case. Which one was true? The statement he made to the media when all the cameras were there outside the courthouse in Jonesboro? Or the statement that he made at the University of Arkansas Little Rock where he said he couldn't discuss the facts of the case because he wasn't familiar? Which one is true? One is truthful, one is not. You decide which. So I think the economy of justice really came into play here. The facts kind of became secondary. And before somebody says that's speculation on your part, Shawn, I would hasten to point out that we know that the meetings took place. Meryl Everett reported them in her own blog in the Arkansas Times. So we know that some of these meetings took place. When it comes down to the facts of the case, Mike Allen himself, who by then had been elected sheriff of Crittenden County, said that Scott Ellington made no attempt to contact him to discuss the facts of the case, the witnesses who were available, or any of the rest of it. Okay, let's fast forward to some things the defense is talking about these days. Okay, they brought up these people who live near Terry's relatives in Mountain Home that say, yeah, Terry admitted his guilt. Well, Scott Ellington's had those statements for almost 2 years now. Okay, this is not speculation. This is a fact. Both of the two witnesses have been in and out of jail several times since then. But when Scott Ellington's deputy prosecutor came to testify in Crittenden County only months ago, he swore under oath that the reason that these witnesses have never been contacted is because Scott Ellington can't find them. Well, if they're sitting in jail, how difficult can it be for a circuit prosecutor in the state of Arkansas to find a guy that's cool in his heels? That makes no sense at all. So right now, for me at least, Scott Ellington's got a serious credibility issue on his hands. I'm not going to say that everything the man says is a lie. All I say is it's hard to tell when the man is telling the truth. I think the outcome came down to dollars and cents. It had nothing to do at this point with the facts. It's unfortunate that Damien Echols and his many supporters aren't satisfied with that. But the reality is it really didn't prove anything other than the fact that the state really didn't want to commit the time and talents to keeping the guys in jail.
So, Shawn, we got about 4 more minutes until we bring Terry Hobbs on, right? Can you hear me?
Did I answer C.L. Bobby's question? Was she satisfied with the answer? Because that was a good question. She asked about the consistencies on the confessions. Confessions are almost never 100% accurate. Nobody walks in and admits they did it. A great example is Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy would never admit to what forensic evidence proved as a scientific fact. The man engaged in necrophilia. But does that mean the rest of his confession is invalid? I think you have to look at the facts of the case. For me, the fact that improvised bindings were used on the victims kind of calls into question the whole of John Douglas's theory that this was a planned crime. Wait, it's a planned crime, but you use shoelaces to bind them. How clever! I'd like to see another case that John has worked on that involved that. I really would. He's not going to answer my questions, so I guess we'll always have a lopsided dialogue on how things go. Can we take another question from chat?
Yeah, sure. Let me copy and paste it since you can't hear me. Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, that's a good one.
I don't want to seem like, it's some really good, thoughtful questions there.
Well, if you can see the questions, just go read them and go. But I got one for you. What about the blood on Damien's necklace?
On the necklace?
Yeah.
On the pentacle necklace? That's an interesting story also. When they were getting ready for trial, John Fogelman was spending so much time in Jonesboro, he ended up in a hotel room. And his son came up to visit. His son was home from college on vacation. And his son came up, and they were sitting in the hotel room going through the bags of evidence. And the necklace, at that point, was one of the things that he was looking at for following day's deals. And his son actually spotted the blood on the necklace. Call that whatever you will. That is how that came to be retested by the state. They make light of the poor quality of the Arkansas State Crime Lab, which really has unfairly been attacked. For all their faults and foibles, it's a good crime lab. And I don't say that about every crime lab. And I am very critical of how work is done. So I hate that people say, oh, well, you're just a sock puppet for them. I'm not. But the evidence was retested, and the results of the test could not be admitted. Today, there might have been other things that they could test, but there was so little genetic material on there at the time that they really could not provide a definitive answer on it. Today, it's possible that more could have been done with it. But here's a real burning question for supporters. With all the millions that were donated from people like Henry Rollins and the producer from New Zealand, with all the millions, you can't come up with anything more substantive than 1 out of every 5 males in Arkansas could have been the donor of hairs found or other DNA found in the bindings of the victims. You would think with that much money, you'd have a smoking gun, and it's not there.
Okay, I got another question for you. Oh my God. Okay, here's a good one for you. You don't like this. Now, Shawn, let's answer around the questions. Here's your proof that Damien, Jason, and Jesse are guilty. Present evidence, Shawn.
You mean the railroad ties trapped to them? Okay. Proof that they're guilty. Well, guilt in a legal sense comes when the judge pronounces the verdict. I think that was done not just once but twice in 2 different courtrooms with 2 different juries. What more do you want? Supporters quibble over whether fiber evidence is valid or not. There isn't a state in the United States that doesn't admit fiber evidence. Fiber evidence is admissible in federal courts. Tell me that fiber evidence is not evidence. They were found, Jason had a red fiber that was linked from his home to the crime scene. Well, I don't know too many people who wear red rayon fiber as a matter of course, but, in terms of discrimination, certainly it's not as unique as DNA. But again, are you willing, are supporters willing to throw out 95% of all homicide convictions because we can't find DNA? That's really an important question. If that's the case, let's do it. I can live with the consequences. Can you?
Well, good afternoon.
Yep. Okay, Terry, can you hear me?
Hello? I can hear you.
Terry Hobbs, can you hear me? It's Ed Opperman. You can hear me or you can't? Okay, Terry, can you hear me now?
I can hear you much better.
Yeah. Okay, great. Terry Hobbs, he's the stepfather of Stephen Branch, and he's joining us here on the show with Shawn Wheeler. We're on live now, Terry. And I just want to give Shawn a chance, real quick, to answer one more question before we get into this with Terry. And that's about, it's a question coming from the chat room. And it says, what about the fact that there is no DNA from any of the 3, yet there is other DNA that was found, speaking of Terry, of course, and I am not saying anything about the other DNA that was found either. Yet there's other DNA. Okay. But, Shawn, what do you think about that? Because I want to get into this whole thing, because Terry was smeared on this HBO documentary, and I want to give us a chance here to really give his side of the story. You with me, Shawn?
Are you talking to me right now?
Okay, I guess I'll talk to you, Terry. Okay, I think we lost Shawn for a second. But now, Terry, can you hear me good now?
Your phone's breaking up really bad.
Yeah, that's because you got that cell phone there. But now, let's, Terry, why don't you get out your, describe who you are and what happened to you and why you think this is all going on. So don't worry about me asking questions. Just get started, okay?
Hello? Hello, I'm trying
Terry, can you hear me
to
now?
follow you and make out what is being said. I'm having a hard time getting a reception, I think.
Yeah, I understand. So what I want you to do is just, since I can't ask you questions, I want you to get out what's on your heart right now. What's on your mind, Terry? Tell us your story.
What's on me?
Yeah, tell your story. What's on your mind? The whole story. I want you to give your side of the situation. Without me interrupting.
I can't make out what you're saying, sir.
Okay. Tell us what you want to say. And just get... Good.
If you can hear me, I would like to say that there's a defense team out here, and there's investigators out here working for the Damien Eccles crowd, and they follow me around. They watch every move I make, and all I do is get up and go to work every day and try to live my life and live with the things that has happened in our past.
So, Terry, who do you think is behind all this? Yeah, well, we're here. I can hear you. We can hear you perfectly. You just can't hear me. So I'm asking you, who do you think is behind all this?
I can't make out what you're saying.
Okay, we can hear you fine. 100% clear. You're clear. We can hear you. So since you can't hear me, just go ahead and tell us your side of the story.
Well, I'm just being a step-parent, and I helped raise a little boy in West Memphis, Arkansas. Steve Edward Branch is his name. And just so happened that, they was murdered in West Memphis, Arkansas on May the 5th, 1993. And that alone is something that we have to live with. in 2007, I guess I was under investigation and didn't know it by the defense team. And on top of their threats, they have gone around and tried to intimidate me. They have tried to intimidate my family. They have tried to intimidate my friends. And after each intimidation attempt, I get phone calls from my family and friends telling me what they're out here doing. Okay, as I have tried to move forward with lawsuits in the courts tell me you cannot sue people. So as I try to move forward with the law, having them arrested for the things they do, the law says you cannot arrest people for doing stuff like this. There's nothing on the books. Now, I've tried in Arkansas, I've tried in Tennessee, and I sometimes just don't know what to do next, except dodge their allegations, and that's all they are. And I don't appreciate the way that I've been done over everything that has been done. I haven't done a thing wrong to anybody. And sometimes I don't know what to say.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, I understand.
I really do.
Can you hear me now?
You know, this whole thing has caused lots of problems. It's tore my family's life up. I've been divorced since this, and I have children that has to see all this stuff. I have family that has to see all this stuff, friends, and everyone that knows me knows better, but we still have to put up with it. And I think there's some wrong in that. And I'm just looking for the right person
Terry, can you hear me?
And say, now, this is wrong. You know, where they at?
Terry, can you hear me a little bit better now?
Excuse me?
Can you hear me a little better now?
I can a little bit.
Okay, Terry, we have questions from the chat room for you. Do you think you'd be able to answer some of those questions? Oh, good.
Do I think what?
Okay. What was that?
No, I hear it echoes.
Oh, now I'm
I
having
hear a lot of echoes.
Yeah, me too. Okay, sorry about the audio problems, guys. Let's see here. 1 second, Terry. Terry, did you give a statement to the West Memphis PD? You were questioned, right?
Okay.
So Terry, you were questioned by the Arkansas PD, right?
I was what?
Questioned by the police.
I didn't understand that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Terry. It's my fault. Let me ask you this question.
Ed,
okay,
if I can.
Some of the people. Yeah. Go, Shawn.
Terry, the one that we're talking about is you were questioned only a few years ago at West Memphis Police Department. You consented for hours to be questioned, and the video's online. For a guy who's supposed to be so uncooperative, you did consent to come in and talk. They videotaped it. It's been online for years. So for supporters to make out like you're this shadowy figure that doesn't want to come forward, you just seem to be, you trust the police department, you just don't trust the people the defense has hired.
Did you catch that, Terry?
No, I didn't get that. I'm sorry.
That was Shawn.
I'll say this.
Question.
No, I'm not. Right. I heard Shawn's voice.
Yeah, we're going to take a break, okay? We're going to take a break. Maybe we can figure something out, okay? Got a break. Okay, Terry, we got a break coming up for 4 minutes, okay? 4-minute break.
Okay.
Okay, great. So just hold on, okay, brother?
Most guys freeze. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
The blood is filling with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. Your heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. Your neurobiological system is telling it to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting to danger, unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio.
Folks, join me, Terry Ackerman, also known as Lady Horse, every Sunday, 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for A Touch of Country on Studio A. We have a variety of topics we discuss. We focus on country living, holistic healing, and self-reliance. I look forward to having you join us by listening in, calling in, or interacting into our chat room here at freedomslips.com. I can't wait to meet you.
I have worked with the CIA, the NSA, the Templars, and the Bilderbergers. Now I work for you. My show will disclose the secrets, science, and esoteric knowledge. Join me, Stephen D. Kelly, for 2 hours every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time on freedomslips.com for Revolution Radio Studio V. You can also listen to previous shows by going to youtube.com/Free Revolution Radio.
Enjoy your extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another extra big-ass fries?
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please come back when you can afford to make a purchase.
No.
I'm sorry you're having
trouble.
trouble.
Come on. My kids are starving.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, but above all, we believe in freedom of existence through self-reliance. This station is 100% listener-supported, and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if food prices go crazy, the shit hits the fan, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our seed pack special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. We need, as humans, to start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning, how to do everything website, all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
You've just recreated the worst possible nightmare.
Fiscal year 1999, 2.3 trillion missing. Fiscal year 2000, 1.1 trillion missing.
You'd think with 2 mortgages out, the repo guy staking out my car, my job on the line.
Even when we win, it's just a matter of time before we give it all back.
There are serious financial management problems.
Are we potentially at a point where we might actually lose the financial system as we know it?
And you're standing there and you suddenly realize, hey, I'm still here.
Don't be a victim of the current economic crisis. Turn the tables on the banksters, collection agencies, and other crooks. You can stress out trying to find a way to make the minimum payments every month, or you can get them to pay you. Join hosts Jesse and Dave every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time for What Lies in Your Debt, right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Where information never sleeps.
What do you think it is? I don't know. Whatever it is.
Welcome to Altair More, gentlemen.
Join me, Joe Kiernan, and Dr. J every Sunday from 10 p.m. Eastern to midnight for Researchers on a Mission Radio. We will be interviewing guests in ufology, experts on the paranormal, and stories from you, the listener. Every Sunday, 10 p.m. in Studio B. Join us for some amazing conversations and edge-of-your-seat true thrillers.
Right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Studio B, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday nights. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Okay, well, welcome back to the Opperman Report. This is Ed Opperman, and I really want to apologize for the listeners and to our guest, Terry Hobbs, for the bad audio problems we're having. But we got Shawn Wheeler here, and Shawn Wheeler is a good friend to Terry Hobbs, and he's going to lay out the case for us. Hey, Terry Hobbs, can you hear me, brother?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me any better, Terry? Okay, great, Terry.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit better.
Oh, good. Thank God. Okay, because I want us to take some listener phone calls, too, if we can. Let's just hope we can get it through with you and me. Now, Terry, you were describing some of the harassment that was going on with the defense investigators following you around, and wasn't there an incident, too, where they presented themselves as FBI agents?
Were there 2 pieces of hair? Is that what you asked?
No, that you were picked up one time by some guys in suits, and they pretended to be FBI agents.
I was picked up by an FBI agent? Is that what you asked?
Guys who pretended to be FBI. Yeah, you were picked up and questioned by some guys, but they weren't FBI. They pretended to be FBI.
Well, John Douglas is a former FBI, if that's what you're talking about. I wasn't picked up. I agreed to meet with him. Was that the question?
You did agree to meet with him? Yeah, sort of. Shawn was telling me a story about how some guy... What was that? Okay, Shawn, are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm familiar with
Shawn,
what Terry's, trying to... I can fill in the gaps on that one. Terry contacted me, and we talked about this a couple of years ago. Yeah, when John Douglas got involved in this case, I want to frame this by saying that I was initially a fan of John's. I'm not anti-FBI, and a lot of the agents are very respectable and do a good job. That said, and for those who feel like we're searching more, please take a minute and look up the Guy Paul Moran case. His last name spelled M-O-R-I-N, in Canada, and John Douglas. Look up what he did there. In this case, John Douglas somehow fixated on Terry as a suspect. So he and a couple other folks worked together to try to collect more evidence to try to tie Terry to the crime. Try to obtain DNA samples, try to evoke a confession, to psychologically pressure Terry to make inculpatory statements to consent to be questioned. And Terry, to be honest with you, is probably one of the most laid back guys I know. I'm certainly more laid back than I am, and I've had all kinds of things said about me. So they kept this pressure up. They created the false appearance that he was under surveillance by law enforcement, when in fact he was not. There were no law enforcement people investigating him, in anywhere near his house, which was, I think, Douglas convinced these people that by doing this, he would just instantly break down and go, "Oh my God, I'm guilty of these crimes. Please throw me in prison." That didn't happen, but it did cause problems for him. The guy's trying to hold down his job. He's trying to be a responsible citizen. You're doing all this kinds of. Even a person who has not committed a crime would begin to feel pressure over this. Okay, so. That said, they pulled the same stuff on Wayne Jacoby. They picked Wayne Jacoby up driving all these SUVs with tinted windows and guys in suits to create the impression that they are in fact active law enforcement when they are not. You can call that whatever you want, dirty tricks, whatever, but it's false. It's misleading. He would have been well within his rights to whip out some pepper spray and say, "Here, let me spray you down and see how you like that, my friend." So to create this impression these are violent, dangerous guys that only due to the efforts of John Douglas are being brought to justice, that's not true. Some very false, malicious, and pretty mean stuff that may even be illegal. That's the kind of things the defense did here. But let me say this about Terry. You can YouTube this. Please do. Go to YouTube.com. Type in Terry Hobbs. About the third or fourth choice down, you'll see black and white video of him sitting in a chair. He's being questioned at West Memphis Police Department a few years ago. Okay? Why was he being questioned? He was being questioned because they were told to find out if he had anything to do with the crime. He submitted to this questioning for hours. Okay? If Terry was really trying to be evasive, if Terry believed that he was going to be suddenly brought to justice, why would he present himself to a police department out of state that had no authority to get him? That's not consistent with somebody that's guilty. So to me, the reality of this is Terry has cooperated with real law enforcement. He has not cooperated with false law enforcement. That's the truth of it right there. I don't think somebody that's been subject to that kind of pressure. He wants to cooperate. He wants to tell the truth, and he would like the right people in prison. And he's done his part. He's shouldered his responsibility. But I have no respect for John Douglas or his little game playing. Terry's not the only person they've done this to. Okay, people associated with Dennis Reardon went out to jurors, presented himself as law enforcement when in fact they're either retirees or not even law enforcement in the area at all. They're from California. Asked them to make questions and lull them into a sense of security, and then present statements that this juror admitted to me that this went on in a jury room. That was the basis of Eccles' appeals, stuff from people who were obtained under false pretenses. But supporters attached, this proves that this juror did this in a jury room. You show me a signed sworn affidavit with a notary on it, and we'll talk about that. The defense never presented that. None of the jurors have come forward and said, "My God, these guys are innocent. Somebody twisted my arm in the jury box." Didn't happen. It's not true.
May I say something here?
Okay, I see the question. Is it not true that John Mark Byers was crucial in implicating Terry? How do you talk about John Mark Byers and the word credible in the same sentence? I know the guy. Yeah, it is true. I think John was, let's talk about John for a minute because I do know him well enough to talk about him. John Mark Byers had a successful construction business after he got out of prison. I know this for a fact. He lost his driver's license. His business suffered. Suddenly, Mark went from being a non-supporter who believed the right people were guilty and right people were in prison to suddenly believing that somebody else must have done it. Over time, this involved him making phone calls to Terry to get Terry to make statements. Okay, remember the John Douglas Dirty Tricks Department? Good question. Glad you asked it. Okay, you look at the question. You look up the audio, and this is also on YouTube. Look up the audio where Mark is talking to Terry Hobbs, and Mark says, "Now, Terry, it says in the Bible this." Wow, Mark, you really strike me as a Bible reading guy. Let's quote some scripture together. And he is trying to get Terry to say something. What is it that Mark's calling up for? He didn't call him and say, "Terry, let's go have a beer." He didn't call up and say, "Terry, how's the kids? Have you seen your ex-wife? How's the grandchildren doing?" He didn't do that. He calls up and he's talking about the Bible. You talk about a strange conversation from Mark. That's got to be it. I met with Mark, had dinner, worked on, took my son up to work with a guy. Never once he say, "Shawn, let's sit down and read the Bible together." But here he is suddenly with Terry Hobbs going, "Terry, let's talk about the Bible." And Mark Douglas is not, or John Douglas is not pulling the strings behind that. Tell me for a fact. I want to hear it. In fact, I'll pay for the polygraph. I'll donate the money. Put Mark Byers on a polygraph, and I want him to say, "John Douglas did not give me a script to follow when I talked to Terry," because I'd like to see the results of that. I guarantee you that's one polygraph Mark Byers will never pass. Next question. Can you give me another one out of chat?
Say something here. Hello?
Let me say this about Terry. I trust Terry. He's a good man. He's had his faults over the years, made his mistakes, but Terry's a decent guy. Offer on the polygraph is indefinite. Whenever Mark wants to take it, I'll pay for it.
Yeah, Terry, can you hear me now, Terry?
Now you're breaking up still.
Terry?
Can you paste it in?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, okay. I was hoping Terry could make a statement because he keeps saying he wants to say something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send you something.
May I step in and say something?
Yes.
Hello? Okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to say this. I've always, Can I say something?
Go ahead. Yes,
I've always made myself available to the police back in 1993, 94 during the trials, and any time after that. I've offered them my journals, and I've always been told, "Terry, we don't need it." Well, and I know why they don't need it. The police has put out that Mr. Hobbs was not a suspect in 93, and he is not a suspect today. It is this defense that keeps coming up with all this crap, and it causes our problems. And I don't appreciate that. This is our tragedy. We ought to be able to go through the human system process without all of this. They have made a circus out of our case up all the way up to their documentaries, and they have done some awful documentaries about this case. But I am not a suspect. You never have been one. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Terry. Now, would you guys be interested in taking some phone calls?
Sure.
Okay, if anybody has a call, if anybody has a question, they can call in 347-688-2902. That's 347-688-2902. And in the meantime, Shawn, I sent you some questions in the chat there.
Yeah, I saw that. It's good. Can we go on to that, or are we going to hold for break?
Break is not coming up for another 14 minutes.
Oh, outstanding. Okay, what Lisa O'Brien said is quite correct. Terry has never invoked his right to counsel. He's never invoked his right against self-incrimination. So, contrast that to Damien Echols and Jason Baldwin. If they have nothing to hide, why don't they want to talk? That's an important thing. one other question was, is it true the defense told David Jacoby was, yes, he was told he was a match for DNA at the crime scene. And, he's not. But, let me answer that question, because remember, we're not talking about justice, we're talking about law. In 2006, the Arkansas State Supreme Court sent a case back for Stacey Eugene Johnson, who appealed on the basis that DNA testing only proved on the order of 1 in 250 that it was his DNA found, or that his genetic material matched that on the victim. He was given a second trial. He was found guilty in 2 trials. The Arkansas State Supreme Court granted him his motion to test over the objection of the circuit court, simply because it was not definitive enough. Okay, and this is one of the fears a lot of us had about the DNA statute, was that it would not just merely be a law, but be considered a right, despite the fact that the state legislature and the governor and the voting public had not made it a statute. It made it a right. It was simply a statute. It's a law. It's not a right guaranteed by the state constitution. But it's being treated as though it is a right by the state Supreme Court. So now let's fast forward up to date. Supporters are holding out like DNA evidence is all created equal. Well, it's not. You get varying levels of definition. 1 in 250 was considered by the court as not sufficient for the defendant's rights. So they sent it back for further retesting. They said this guy's got a guaranteed right to appeal, despite the fact it's a statutory right. All right. In this case, in Eccles, they have not proven that anybody other than the defendants were guilty of this case, and certainly not the standard that would be found on appeal. Defendants, the supporters act as though this is a new trial, and it's not a trial; it's an appeal. Okay, and the way this works is when you're at trial, you're supposed to have a jury that labors under the presumption that you are in fact innocent. But once you're found guilty, and all 3 were found guilty, the burden shifts to the defense. They must then overcome that guilty verdict. That becomes the defense's burden on appeal, and that's really where we are now. So, man, the audio's getting strange again for us.
Well, we got a caller. We got a caller. Caller 623, area code 623. What's your question?
Hi. Yeah, my name is Hannah, and I have a question for Mr. Hobbs.
Sure. Go ahead.
I would like to know. Excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Caller, can you turn off your player? Can you turn off your audio?
Okay, I'm going in the other. Okay. My question for Mr. Hobbs is, what is his relationship with John Mark Byers? And does he recall his whereabouts with Mr. Byers on the evening of May 5th and when they first met, and their activities as far as searching in the woods for the 3 children?
I did.
Okay, Terry Hobbs. Did you get that?
I did. And my relationship to John Mark Byers, I never knew him before May the 5th, 1993. I met him in the neighbors in the Moore's front yard. First time I ever seen him in my life. His whereabouts as of the night of May the 5th, we all did the same thing. We all looked and didn't know what we was looking for, didn't know where to look. We were going on tips of others, of where people thought they seen children riding bicycles at.
So what do you say, Cole? Are you happy with that?
She hung up.
Okay. Well, okay, that sounds like a good answer to me. Any other callers? Shawn?
No, not yet.
Do we have another call?
Okay, Shawn, do you have no other calls yet, but do you have anything to add? Go ahead.
I just want to comment on one thing. One of the questions that came in, and this was for Terry, but I'd like to field this. He says, living with this tragedy for all these years, why can't he remember the events of that evening? All right, Terry's held down a job. He's dealt with investigators. He's dealt with harassment of just about every kind that you can imagine. Eccles sat in prison, had lots of time on his hands, but here we are 20 years later, and he can't remember where he was that day. Jason can't remember where he was that day. Jesse can't remember where he was that day. I'm sorry, but if you put me in prison, I'd have all the time in the world to remember exactly what I did that day, and I'd be thinking about it a lot. Sorry, that dog won't hunt.
Okay, we're still taking calls. It's 347-688-2902. So now, Shawn and Terry, what do you think about the only kind of accusation they're able to hurl against Terry Hobbs is this nonsense about there was some DNA. I like how they call it a ligature, on the ligature or the rope. But then it turns out that it was one of the boys' shoelaces, and we don't know. It could have been Terry Hobbs' stepson whose shoelace that was. What do you have to say about that?
You're breaking up a bit again.
Yeah, I know.
Not all DNA evidence is equivalent. What people want is they want a silver bullet that lets a jury escape the difficult part of deciding guilt or innocence. In a case of sexual assault, you find in over a third of the cases, and sexual assault is about one of the most personal crimes you could ever commit against a person. 1/3 of all sexual assaults, there is zero DNA, none. Okay? Now, with zero DNA in sexual assault, where you clearly have some kind of contact between the victim and the person who's committing the crime, how much do you think you're going to find in homicide? And the question I would ask the folks say, well, the DNA proved this or DNA proved that. Are you willing to set aside 1/3 of every sexual assault in the country because there's no DNA to prove that they did it? What if there's videotape? In the case I mentioned earlier, Stacey Eugene Johnson, there was a significant amount of other evidence that the man committed the crime. But because DNA testing years later was not definitive enough, they sent it back for further tests. The testimony, the findings of fact of the court, the findings of the jury are set aside simply because somebody invents another scientific test. You know what? I've never met a defense attorney, and I've met a lot of them. I've never met a defense attorney that said, my God, this man is obviously guilty because I ran out of scientific test to petition for. As long as they can keep filing, they will. They're going to continue to challenge the evidence, which of course is their job. But that doesn't mean that the fact that they found yet one more scientific test is going to prove their guilt. If I may, I got one more comment on that. Years ago, there was a cop killer in Memphis that was filing an appeal. And I question in that case, does the scientific evidence prove anything new? They took an X-ray years after the fact and showed this X-ray and said that this guy's not guilty. But it didn't prove anything. It didn't challenge the facts at trial. And that's where we are here, is that none of the DNA evidence has really challenged the testimony in a meaningful way that was evoked at trial. It's never challenged the evidence that's submitted, the fiber evidence or anything else. So why is a new DNA test that doesn't really inculpate a new suspect valid? Because some supporters says so, or because Henry Rollins went on TV? I don't buy it.
Okay, Shawn, we got a caller. Let's see what the caller number, area code 281 has to say.
Hi.
Caller 281, area code 281. Go ahead. What do you got?
Yes. That's
What's
me.
the question?
I've got a question for Shawn, and I'd like to ask one for Terry too. Shawn was talking about the fiber evidence. Is he unaware of the fact that all that fiber evidence with later testing with chromographs and things that were not available in 93, that evidence has all been disproven? It has been proven, in fact, that none of those fibers came from the places where the prosecution purported that they came from. So I would like for Shawn to address that, and then I would also like for Terry to address that, and then I'll hang up because of all the audio problems. Terry says he's been very cooperative.
Sorry about that. We only got 2 minutes, Shawn.
From what I have read, and I have read extensively, every time the police went by right after the murders to find Terry, he was not at home. And it seems to me that he was hiding. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, Shawn, we got like a minute. Give us a minute, then we'll cover it when we get back.
Okay, fair enough. I did look at the evidence that the defense tried to bring to bear on the fiber testimony. I'll give you a couple things to look at when we come back from the break. But what I would tell you is go look at the defense experts on the fiber evidence. Look at the ones that they brought on appeal, and what it is that they're saying, because that's how I'm going to answer your question. You can look that up online, both of them. One was an expert with the Michigan State Crime Lab. Look at what he has to say about fibers in general.
Okay, excellent. When we get back after the break, we'll get into the whole thing about the fibers with Shawn and with Terry. Again, audience, I apologize for the audio problems, but we're making our best that we can do with this. This is the Opperman Report on freedomslips.com. And don't forget, we're a listener-sponsored radio station. We don't accept any kind of commercials. So in order to keep the station alive, you need to go to that donate button and click on that, so that we can keep the station going. And if you click on the donate button during the Opperman Report, then the Opperman Report will be here next week as well, and they won't kick me off the station. But again, I want to thank Shawn and Terry, and we're going to go for a break now, and we see you after the break.
Are we on break? So?
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
A challenge. Let's give him one.
The voice that whispers in your ears are the screams that you fear. The mind you cannot defy is the heart that rules mankind. The people who made you are the gods that will save you. I am Steve Travesty. I am the voice. The ghost in the machine. Ghost in the Machine, Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, Studio B.
Right here, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps.
What are we supposed to do?
I'm going to fight because I'm used to it. The rest of you are going to have a tougher choice. And look, I don't want to sell it to you. It's too ugly for that. And it's ugly and it's hard. But when you're fighting in your own backyard, you're fighting for your family. It all hurts a little less and it makes a little more sense. But for us, this is our home. Even the tiniest flea can drive a big dog crazy. So the first thing we have to do is learn how to work together. Become a unit. And that's going to take some time. So we're going to have to evolve. Rewire our reflexes. Learn new skills and adapt old ones. So we'll find people we can trust. Friends with their ears to the ground who can help us get the things we need to fight back. Watch what they do. Study their tactics, their routines. The more we know, the easier it will be to hurt them. But we'll need to be smart, and we'll need to be patient. Hit them on our terms. When we're good and ready. We inherited our freedom. Now it's up to all of us to fight for it.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, where the fight begins and information never sleeps.
There is no good and evil. There is only power, and those too weak to seek it.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Be sure to tune in weekdays 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time for Strange Universe with Shawn David Morton. A strange, interesting, and engaging wide variety of topics. So be here. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Revolution Radio. You're listening listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Opperman Report. This is Ed Opperman with my guest Shawn Wheeler and Terry Hobbs, who is the stepfather of one of the victims, Stephen Branch, of the West Memphis 3 homicides, the 1993 homicides. So Shawn, we were talking about the fiber evidence.
Yes.
Remember that caller?
I read the letter from Phillipsborn, which is the first information about the testing that the last caller was talking about. You know what she claimed, and again, it's one of those things where you take that tiny little sliver of a statement and then convert it to something which it's not. Fiber evidence, you hear supporters say it is worth. Yeah.
Hello.
Hey Terry, you're back on, right? Terry,
yes,
it's Ed Opperman. Okay, one thing to remember, Terry, is during the breaks when you hear, during the break when you hear the music, try not to talk, okay? But we're live back on the air, and Shawn was just talking.
Okay.
Okay, Shawn.
Okay. Yeah, the reports that they're referring to were from Dr. John Goodpaster of Purdue and Christopher Bomarito, who worked for the Michigan State Police Crime Laboratory. And what the caller was implying is that the evidence that these individuals for the defense produced proved that the fibers did not link them to the scene of the crime. That's not what the nature of the reports were. First, one of the reports that the defense brought attacked the reputation and methods at the Arkansas State Crime Lab. Let me address that part first. The Arkansas State Crime Lab was ASCLD certified. It's the American Society of Crime Lab Directors at the time that these tests were done. People who are on the cabaret of ASCLD had certified the lab, and one of them even worked for the state lab at the time. So this idea that the methods and procedures are seriously in doubt and obviously poor fails to hold up to scrutiny. Either it was certified or it was not. It was a certified lab. So let's just start with that. I'm not saying that Goodpaster is wrong or that the defense is wrong. What I'm telling you is they were following current practice of the time. Practice evolves over time. Methods improve and science advances. So when you look from something 15 or 20 years back, obviously it's not state of the art. It's kind of disingenuous to cast it in that light. That's the biggest criticism I have of the defense on account. But to move forward, let's talk about Christopher Bomarito and the Michigan State Police Crime Laboratory. All right, the State Crime Lab is funded in two ways. It's funded by the state, but it's also funded by the cities and counties that rely on the State Crime Lab to do things. There's been huge scandals with that particular lab. All right. And other independent labs. So that's kind of an important thing to use as a backdrop for this. I'm not going to besmirch their reputation now. They work hard. They're trying to improve things. They've had a huge budget increase only a year ago to try and remedy some of the deficiencies in the lab. But let's be honest. The Michigan State Crime Lab has been at risk of losing their certification. And yet it's one of their former experts who only retired a few years ago that's calling into question, what was done in Arkansas. Christopher Bomarito is an interesting guy, though. He did a report that you can find that says, and I'm just going to summarize it in a couple words. He's saying that fiber testing is bogus science and nobody should ever be convicted of it. It should never be used. Now, if he really believes that, the only question I have for Christopher Bomarito, feel free to ask him this, is have you ever testified in court? Have you ever worked at a lab that did fiber testing? And if so, did you oppose the introduction of fiber evidence in the conviction while you were working for the Michigan State Crime Lab? If you did, my hat's off to you. You're living and breathing what you believe, and I can't criticize that. But if the answer is you did not oppose it, then it seems kind of like his opinion follows where the money goes. When he worked for the state, he had a different opinion than he does now, or at least he remained silent, while others said, this is valid evidence, it proves their guilt. All right. So on the basis of one guy who questions methods 20 years after the fact and another who says the entire science of fiber evidence is bogus, well, if it's bogus, lobby to change it. Get rid of it. Make it where no state can ever introduce it. But right now, in federal court, under the federal rules of evidence, fiber evidence is admissible. All 50 states you can admit this evidence. So as long as it's scientifically generally accepted by the community, it is admissible evidence. So sorry that one I'm not persuaded. You haven't proven that the fibers don't link, and what you found is experts whose opinion happen to agree with yours. Never submitted to the court, never under oath. And like I said, if Christopher Bomarito wants to revisit his work at the Michigan State Crime Lab, I'm all ears.
Excellent, Shawn. So we got a caller, area code 561. What is your question?
Oh, okay, yeah. Is Terry Hobbs here? Because I have a question for him.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Ask your question, and hopefully
Hello there.
Yeah, Terry.
Yeah, my question for Mr. Hobbs is, in his police interview, all right, in his police interview in 2007, he claimed he saw Mark and Melissa Byers driving on the service road from inside the woods. Mark and Melissa were only driving on that road at 7 p.m., according to them. So if Hobbs was in the woods at 7 p.m., why didn't he see the West Memphis 3 in a 3-acre patch of woods? That's my question.
Did you get that question, Mr. Hobbs?
Yeah, I heard the questions. I did see Mark and Melissa on the service roads, and as far as why didn't I see the West Memphis 3 in there, I didn't know what I was looking for. I was just walking around a 3-acre patch of wood, not knowing what was out there, what to expect, what to look for, nothing. We were following tips from people who said we'd seen them go into them woods. And as far as the lady who saw Mr. Hobbs has been hiding from the police, what?
No, thank you, Terry. Continue.
Yeah, as far as the young lady who thought that every time the police come by my home that I wasn't there and she felt like I was hiding from the police, I've never hid from the police. I went down and talked to them several times back in '93. I've always been available to them, and so I've never hid from them. I want to clear that up.
Okay, caller, do you have a follow-up?
No, I really don't have a follow-up other than I'm curious why he never told the authorities in 1993 about the wet black bum that he saw coming out of the woods on the morning of the 6th. Does he have an explanation for that?
No, probably because I never was asked a lot of things. I don't know why I wasn't asked, but I did talk a lot to the police, and trust me, we had nothing to hide, and we've done nothing wrong other than being abused by a whole lot of people.
Thank you, Mr. Hobbs.
Any other questions, caller?
Can I comment on that? I'd like to comment on that.
No, sir.
Okay. One of the things that I would say is sometimes, you know, we view things through the eyes of normally of a witness rather than the eyes of an investigator. Things that you see or perceive or noted, you may never make any comment about. And if you don't believe that while you're gassing up, you're driving down the road, look at the signs that say, if you see something, say something. I was talking to somebody who knew facts that related to a particular crime that weren't in the record. And when the person made the comment to me, I said, wait a minute, you know, would you say that again? They said, why? Is that important? And I said, yeah, actually it is kind of important. It wasn't something that they really paid attention to because they really hadn't looked through all the facts of the particular case I was looking at the time. So to answer your question is something that to you seems like a, wow, did you really saw that moment? May seem very insignificant to the person who sees it at the time simply because they aren't looking at the totality of facts. And that's where an investigator he's looking at it through different eyes than the person who actually sees something that to them isn't particularly significant, but may actually be the linchpin in a serious case. You know, I'd hope that addresses that.
Terry, we got a question for you from the chat room.
Do what now?
Sean, maybe you can ask him since he can't hear me. Were you in the woods off Goodwin or the one across? Okay, I'll ask the question so the audience can hear. Terry, were you in the woods off Goodwin or the one across the pipe behind Blue Beacon? And maybe Shawn can ask him the question.
Yeah, Terry, what they are asking is, were you in the woods off Goodwin or the one across the pipe bridge behind Blue Beacon? Because there were two sets of woods. There was a set of woods next to the neighborhood and a set of woods over by the interstate. Which ones were you in?
Right, we were in the woods behind the Blue Beacon truck stop.
Okay, that is actually also the same spot that Mark Byers was seen. And I actually spoke to one of the people who was working there that night who did see Mark Byers when he came to search the area there. You know, I mean, nobody's ever disputed that some of the parents were in there. I think the question is they make out like you could get in and out of there without being seen. Let me make a quick comment on that. When I revisited this case again in 1996 and 97 and first started working on it to see what the facts were, I went back, I looked at the crime scene, I talked to people, and one of the things that never really came out at trial was the Blue Beacon where this happened had been robbed at gunpoint several times in the months leading up to the crime. So they had when they first opened, they would leave the back door open to the truck wash, and you could just pull up and back, and they start cleaning your vehicle up. But because of armed robberies, they started locking the doors, they improved the lighting, they put fencing in to make it a safer place to be. These employees were very vigilant, so this idea that you could just sneak in there and haul 3 bodies in and nobody would notice from the back of the business is kind of preposterous. So they noticed things. They noticed people coming and going that were close to the business. You know, so there's really it's kind of absurd to say that might have been a likely entry point from Blue Beacon. You know, and here's a real big question mark. You know, everybody, the supporters for years ago, well, this isn't a primary crime scene. Okay, let's see. The bodies were found next to the pipe bridge. The clothing was found in the ditch. The bindings were made from improvised bindings from shoelaces. The last known sighting was not even 100, 200 yards away, but the primary crime scene is some as yet to be discovered location. Fine. As Greg McCurry likes to say, you show me the evidence and I'll look at it. So far, none of, despite spending millions, nobody's ever found that. They dug up Mark Byers' house. They still haven't found it. You know, why is this? I don't know. Can I talk about turtles?
Yeah, go ahead.
As probably saying, why do you want to talk about turtles for a minute? They've decided that the bite marks in 97, 98, it was bite marks, and John Mark Byers had all his teeth taken out because the profiler nobody's ever heard of is on the case, which of course was false. It had no basis in truth. Now it's all these marks aren't bite marks, but now they're turtle bites. I don't have a picture of a single turtle, and I've been out of those woods for years. Tell me, where do the turtles come from? Come on, you guys are grasping at straws.
Did you get the question about the hole in the ground that was covered that you mentioned in your interview with Lieutenant Mitchell? I sent it to you in chat, Shawn.
Okay, I saw the question. I'm kind of curious what you're talking about. A hole in the ground that was covered that you mentioned in the interview with Lieutenant Mitchell. Did the 2 boys you mentioned search this? Oh, I know. We're going back to the manhole theory here. I can see that coming. Terry, what they're asking is the hole in the ground that was covered that you mentioned, Lieutenant Mitchell. Did the 2 boys you mentioned search this hole on the evening of May 5th or on the morning of May 6th?
Well, everybody is echoing and breaking up so bad I can't make out what we're saying. I hear something about a hole in the ground. Not sure what they're talking about.
I'm guessing this is the re-interview, the one they did a few years ago.
If it's okay, I'm going to have to get off here and go back to work. I appreciate what little time I got with you.
Terry, we appreciate it too. Thank you very much. And we'll try and reschedule and try and do a second interview when we have our audio problems straightened out. But thank you for coming, Terry, and we really appreciate it. I think you answered a lot of questions and straightened out a lot of suspicion. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you guys, and we're all about the truth. You know, we have nothing to hide. I won't answer questions to this defense team, and that's why they attacked me like they did. You have a good day, Eric.
Thank you very much, Terry. Thank you very much. So, Shawn, we got a question. Have there been any other murdered children in West Memphis area since the West Memphis 3 went to prison?
Okay, no, as a matter of fact, that's a kind of a funny thing. We haven't had any other instances where 3-8-year-olds have turned up missing. You got to wonder with dangerous suspects like Terry and Mark running around how that happened. I mean, if the right people weren't in prison, why did the murder stop? Let's go back and revisit the whole. I was arrested for wearing black thing. We joke about that, but most of the people who write this stuff never lived in Arkansas, and I have. In 1993, Marion High School had a group that was called the Trench Coat Mafia, and it was something that was known locally, but it never really made it in any books or things like that. And these kids, in summer heat would wear trench coats walking home from school. They couldn't wear it on the school property, but it was a fashion statement. So when people, supporters like to make out that Eccles was this cutting edge, I'm a rebel against society thing. No, he wore this stuff because everybody else was wearing it. So let's go ahead and deal with that. Then there's he was arrested for wearing black and listening to no talent garage bands from the Bay Area that I won't mention by name. Okay, I've listened to heavy metal and I've worn black. Nobody's arrested me. That disproves your theory just as readily as yours proves that he was arrested for it. Guys, to hear them tell it, if you wear black and you listen to Metallica, you're going. I'm sorry, I said their name, didn't I? You're going to prison. Well, that's just simply not the case. If that were true, Johnny Cash would still be sitting in jail in Conway somewhere. It has no basis in fact. The rest of his behavior is really what distinguishes him from so many other kids who never said to their girlfriend, "Oh, I think if we have a child, I'll sacrifice it." That never threatened their parents, who were never sent to psychiatric treatment, that were never alleged to kill dogs to take their skulls. Eccles has admitted that he took skulls. So why is it that people are disputing that he had them? You can't even discuss this stuff. Can we globalize this back up and talk about capital punishment by itself for a minute? Ed, you've said to me that you don't agree with capital punishment. I think that's fair, right?
Sure.
Okay, and I'm pro capital punishment, but here's the thing. Let's talk about some of the arguments people come up with on this. I'm against somebody says, well, I'm against capital punishment because we could make a mistake. Well, you don't have a constitutional right against mistakes. It's a bad idea. Nobody would in good conscience agree with punishing somebody who's not guilty. But the bottom line is we accept that there are some imperfections to the system. The question is, do those imperfections hamstring society so much as the alternative? If we want 100% proof guilty, our system would cease to function. Society would break down. Criminals would be on the loose. And eventually it would become a vigilante society that nobody wants. So now we're back to, what are the reforms going to be? What are we going to change? I don't want somebody guilty ever to be sentenced to death, but certainly not executed. But by the same token, there's cost savings, and people say, well, capital punishment is more expensive. Compared to what? The same geriatric care that you give to somebody sentenced to death, you'll give to somebody that's sentenced to life, assuming that you'll keep them there. The states that have abolished capital punishment still have geriatric care, still have wings inhabited by people in their 60s and 70s, and in some cases in their 80s. So the costs of care do not evaporate, but more importantly, the cost of appeal. These appellate lawyer practices, do you think that they just all pack up and go home and say, well, that's it, my career in law is over, I can no longer practice law because they have abolished capital punishment. Sure, yeah, right. You believe that? These guys, the minute capital punishment is gone, start appealing life sentences as being cruel and unusual punishment. It never ends. So what is a just punishment that people who oppose it will accept? 2 timeouts and no lime jello? We make you go stand in the corner for an hour and say, okay, I promise not to rape and sexually mutilate people and then kill them? What's the alternative here? If you don't think it's right, if you think the system's putting the wrong people in prison, then change the system. Don't simply change the outcome. How much better is it to have somebody in prison that really is innocent for the rest of their life than it is to execute them? Both would be wrong. So don't just attack the outcome. And that's really what a lot of the argument is. They don't agree with the outcome, so they say that the system's flawed. Well, fix the system. I'm not against change. Just tell me what it's going to be. Okay, we're still looking for callers. If you want to call in with a question for Shawn, it is 347-688-2902. But Shawn, in the meantime, we did get another question about one of your friends, Lori O'Brien, asked, I gave it to you in the chat there on Facebook, haven't you seen that Eccles is falsely claiming that not only found blood in Hobbs' former home, but in his vehicle? And Lax claimed that they found evidence in Yes, I have seen that claim. DNA. Okay, Ron Lax is a really fun and neat guy, but if he says anything, I'd rather see the evidence and see what he has to say about it. That's all I can say about Ron. There is no evidence. There is no DNA evidence that has substantiated that blood of the victims that were extraneous to the household were found in Terry's house. That's totally false. I have no idea why Damien comes up with stuff like that. It's almost like he's got some screenwriter coming up with this stuff. Let's see what I think of Eccles' latest venture into tarot card readings. Well, I'd say it probably works in well with a group from California that helped get him out of prison. I don't have a problem with tarot. I just think that it's kind of funny. You looked at a guy that had this much time on his hands in prison, but the only thing he can do is read tarot cards and do hermetic Reiki. I'm not even sure what Reiki is. I don't know what hermetic Reiki is. I've never had that. I guess I'm culturally unenlightened. It's funny. Ron Lax is a much valued defense investigator. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, we got like 2 minutes left, Shawn. So real quick, what do you want to sum up in this? What do you want to sum up for the listeners?
Well, I think at this point it's safe to say that we're not going to see any major changes in the way this case is handled by the courts. So it's really the court of public opinion. Okay, I want to thank my guests, Shawn Wheeler and Terry Hobbs. Again, we apologize for the audio problems, but we'll see you next week at the Opperman Report.
Listening to Revolution Radio.
Most guys freeze. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
The body's filling with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. The heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling it to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That
is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger